What if the shadows around you could talk? What if they whispered secrets you were never meant to hear? In today's video, we unravel the mysterious tale of Emily, a young girl who claims she can hear voices from shadows. Is she cursed, gifted, or is there something far more sinister at play? You'll discover the chilling events that turned Emily's quiet life into a psychological battleground. We'll uncover the fine line between reality and illusion, diving into lesser-known psychological phenomena and eerie theories about shadowy realms. Stay with us to the end as we explore the twists and turns of Emily's story. You won't want to miss the shocking revelation that challenges everything we think we know about the mind and the unseen world. Welcome to Legend Story, where we dive into the untold, the mysterious, and the extraordinary. If you enjoy gripping stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join us on a journey through the unknown. Let's begin. The town where Emily lived was as unassuming as any small, quiet place. Narrow streets lined with old houses, a single diner where everyone knew your name, and a school where rumors spread faster than the morning bell. Emily's house stood on the edge of the woods, a quaint home with creaky floors and heavy curtains that seemed to block out the world. It was here, in the dim corners of her room and the shadowed halls of her home, that the whispers first began. Emily was just 12 years old, a bright girl with an endless curiosity for the world. She wasn't like other kids who spent their time glued to screens. Instead, she loved sketching, especially drawing what she saw in the woods near her home. Tall trees, swaying branches, and shadows that stretched like long, dark fingers across the earth filled her sketchbook. Her imagination was vivid, perhaps too vivid, as her parents often teased. But Emily wasn't imagining things the first time she heard the whispers. It was late one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting her room in a hazy twilight. She had been sketching the silhouette of a gnarled tree outside her window when she froze. A faint voice, barely louder than a breath, seemed to call her name. Emily, it whispered, drawn out and soft, like a breeze slipping through the cracks. Her heart raced. She turned quickly, scanning her room, but she was alone. "Mom, Dad," she called out, but there was no reply. She approached the corner where the shadow pooled darkest, her hands trembling. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice wavering. Silence. The kind of silence that pressed against your ears and made your heartbeat thunder in your chest. She shook her head, convincing herself it was her imagination. But deep down, she felt something stir, a mix of fear and curiosity she couldn't shake. In the days that followed, the whispers came again. They were faint at first, always when she was alone, and always from the shadows. The voices weren't clear, they mumbled incoherent words, almost like a language she couldn't understand. Yet, there was something hauntingly familiar about them, as if they knew her. Her parents noticed her growing unease. She started avoiding her room, leaving the lights on at all times, and sketching outside instead of near the window. But when they asked her what was wrong, she couldn't find the words. How could she explain hearing voices from shadows without sounding crazy? One night, the voices grew bolder. It was no longer a faint whisper but a distinct murmur that seemed to come from the darkest corners of her room. "Emily, listen," the voice said, louder this time. She bolted upright in bed, her body trembling as she stared at the shadow near her closet. It moved, not like a person stepping forward, but as if the shadow itself had shifted, elongating unnaturally across the floor. Her breath hitched, and she clutched her blanket tightly. She wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come. The voice spoke again. "We have been waiting." By this point, Emily's fear was undeniable, but so was her curiosity. Why her? Why now? Were the shadows trying to tell her something? As terrifying as it was, she couldn't shake the feeling that the voices carried a message, one she wasn't yet ready to hear. In an attempt to understand, Emily started documenting her experiences in a journal. She wrote about the times and places where the voices appeared and sketched the shapes of the shadows she thought moved. Her drawings grew darker, more abstract, filled with jagged lines and empty eyes. As the days passed, Emily began to withdraw from her friends and family. Her parents worried, noticing the change in her behavior. She stopped laughing at dinner, spent less time outside, and refused to sleep in her room without a nightlight. Her friends at school teased her for her quiet demeanor, whispering that she had gone weird. Emily didn't care. How could she explain to anyone what she was experiencing? The voices weren't just sounds anymore, they were a presence. She could feel them watching her, lurking just beyond the edge of light. Desperate for answers, Emily turned to the library, researching everything she could about shadows, voices, and paranormal activity. She found stories of shadow people, entities that lurked in the dark corners of the world. Some claimed they were harmless observers, while others believed they were harbingers of doom. But none of it made sense to Emily. These voices didn't feel random, they felt personal, almost like they were trying to connect with her. One night, Emily decided she couldn't run from the shadows anymore. She turned off her nightlight, letting the darkness fill her room. Sitting cross-legged on her bed, she whispered, "What do you want from me?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the voice replied, clear and deliberate, "To show you the truth." Her breath caught. What truth? Emily's mind raced, but the shadows didn't elaborate. Instead, they grew darker, thicker, as if pulling the light from the room itself. Emily felt something shift inside her, fear mixed with a strange, unsettling curiosity. What truth could the shadows possibly reveal? After Emily's daring decision to confront the shadows, their whispers became more frequent and distinct. They began speaking in fragmented sentences, cryptic yet oddly compelling. Look beyond the light. Follow the darkness to the truth. Emily couldn't understand what they meant, but she felt an eerie pull to follow their words. The shadows seemed to know something she didn't, and despite her fear, a strange curiosity took hold of her. Soon, odd events began to occur around the house. Objects moved slightly from where she last placed them. A book she left on her desk would appear on her bed, her pencil case would shift to the floor. The changes were subtle but undeniable. Her parents brushed it off, chalking it up to forgetfulness or a wandering mind, but Emily knew better. Her sketches also began to change. What started as ordinary drawings of the woods and trees transformed into darker, haunting images. Without realizing it, she drew shadowy figures that seemed to move within the lines when viewed from certain angles. One day, Emily's search for answers led her to an old storage room in the attic. It was a place she rarely visited, dusty and forgotten. As she rummaged through boxes of her family's belongings, she stumbled upon a small, locked chest. On the lid, faded letters spelled out a name she didn't recognize, Eleanor. Inside, she found a stack of aged papers and a photograph of a young girl who looked eerily like her. Beneath the photo was a note, written in shaky handwriting. "They speak to me too. I know the truth now. Beware the light." Emily's hands trembled as she read the words. Who was Eleanor? Could this girl have experienced the same whispers from the shadows? Emily decided to confront her parents about what she found. At first, they were reluctant to talk, dismissing her questions. But when she showed them the photograph and note, their expressions darkened. Her mother, with tears in her eyes, revealed that Eleanor was her great-aunt. She was different, her mother said hesitantly. She used to talk about hearing things, voices. But no one believed her. They said it was all in her head. Emily pressed further, but her parents refused to say more, brushing it off as an old family story best left in the past. But Emily couldn't let it go. She felt a deep connection to Eleanor, as if their fates were intertwined. That night, Emily had a vivid dream. She was standing in a dark forest, the trees looming like towering shadows. A figure appeared in the distance, a girl in a white dress, her face obscured by darkness. The girl extended her hand and whispered, "Come with me." Emily woke with a start, drenched in sweat. The dream felt too real to ignore, and the words echoed in her mind. Was this girl Eleanor? Was she trying to guide Emily toward the truth? Desperate for clarity, Emily confided in her school librarian, Mrs. Fletcher, who had a reputation for being eccentric but kind. Mrs. Fletcher listened intently as Emily recounted everything, the voices, the shadows, and the note she found. You might be experiencing a phenomenon known as shadow interaction, Mrs. Fletcher said thoughtfully. Some believe shadows are more than the absence of light. They're something else. A gateway, perhaps. Mrs. Fletcher handed Emily a book about shadow legends and folklore, warning her to tread carefully. Whatever this is, it's connected to you. But it's also dangerous. Be sure you're ready for what you might find. Emily pored over the book, learning about ancient beliefs that shadows could be gateways to other realms or dimensions. Some cultures viewed them as protectors, while others saw them as harbingers of doom. One story, in particular, caught her attention. It spoke of shadow children, individuals chosen by the darkness to reveal hidden truths about the world. The description sent chills down her spine. Could she be one of them? The voices grew louder, more demanding. They began asking her to do things, to step into the darkness, to close her eyes and trust them. One night, they gave her a chilling ultimatum. If you want to know the truth, you must give yourself to the shadows. Emily stood frozen in her room, the air thick with an oppressive stillness. Was this a test? And what would happen if she gave in? As Emily grappled with the decision, the line between reality and illusion blurred further. Were the shadows guiding her to a revelation, or were they leading her to danger? Her instincts told her there was no turning back. Whatever the shadows wanted her to see, it was waiting in the darkness, just beyond her reach. Emily's hesitation seemed to agitate the shadows. They no longer confined themselves to her room. She began to see flickers of movement in the corners of classrooms, the dark spaces under staircases, and even the woods she once loved to explore. The voices became more insistent, their whispers taking on an urgent tone. Time is running out, Emily. Don't fight it. The truth will free you. Emily's fear was at an all-time high, but so was her determination. She needed answers. She resolved to confront the shadows, and finally uncover the truth they had been guarding. On a stormy night, Emily felt a strange pull toward the woods. The voices were louder than ever, their whispers mingling with the howling wind. She grabbed a flashlight, its weak beam barely cutting through the dense fog, and ventured into the forest. The deeper she went, the quieter the world became. The sounds of the storm faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. The flashlight began to flicker, and Emily's heart pounded as she approached a clearing she had never seen before. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient tree, its twisted branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. The shadows here were alive, swirling unnaturally around the base of the tree. Emily felt her body tremble as the voices surrounded her. This is where it begins. Step closer, Emily. Hesitating, she reached the tree and placed her hand on its rough bark. Suddenly, the world around her seemed to shift. The ground beneath her feet felt unsteady, and the air grew colder. Emily was plunged into a vision, a memory that didn't belong to her. She saw Eleanor, the girl from the photograph, standing in the same clearing. Eleanor was speaking to the shadows, her voice calm and clear. They told me the truth, Eleanor said, her words echoing in Emily's mind. But the truth is a burden, one that you must be strong enough to bear. The vision shifted. Emily saw Eleanor's descent into madness as she struggled to cope with what the shadows revealed. The whispers became screams, and Eleanor's once bright eyes turned hollow and dark. Emily snapped back to reality, her chest heaving as she gasped for air. The shadows were still swirling, but now they formed a shape, a figure that looked both human and otherworldly. Why me? Emily demanded, her voice breaking. What do you want from me? The figure's voice was deep and resonant, unlike the whispers she had grown accustomed to. You are a vessel, Emily. A bridge between worlds. We chose you because you can see what others cannot. They explained that shadows were more than they seemed. They were remnants of another dimension, watching and waiting for those who could hear their call. Emily was one of the chosen few who could connect the two realms, tasked with uncovering truths that humanity had long ignored. The figure gave Emily a choice, to embrace the truth and accept her role as a bridge between worlds, or to walk away and live a life of ignorance. If you walk away, you will forget us, the figure said. But if you choose to stay, you will see the world as it truly is. Emily's mind raced. The thought of walking away was tempting. She could return to her normal life, free from the shadows' whispers. But deep down, she knew she couldn't turn her back on the truth. I'll stay, Emily said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Show me the truth. The shadow surged forward, enveloping her in darkness. Emily felt as though she were falling, her senses overwhelmed by a rush of memories, images, and emotions that weren't her own. She saw glimpses of otherworldly landscapes, ancient secrets, and humanity's hidden past. When the darkness finally receded, Emily was on her knees, gasping for air. The shadows had retreated, but their presence lingered in her mind. She felt different, stronger, wiser, and more connected to the world around her. As she walked back home, Emily noticed that the world seemed sharper, more vivid. She could still hear faint whispers, but they no longer filled her with fear. Instead, they felt like companions, guiding her toward something greater. Her parents were relieved to see her safe but noticed a change in her demeanor. Emily didn't tell them what happened that night. She knew they wouldn't understand. But she kept Eleanor's photograph and the note close, a reminder of the girl who had walked this path before her. The voices left Emily with one final message. Beware the light. It hides more than it reveals. Emily didn't fully understand the warning, but she knew her journey with the shadows was far from over. She had stepped into a world few dared to explore, and there was no turning back. As days passed, Emily noticed unsettling changes within herself. The shadows never truly left, they lingered just out of sight, like a constant presence in her peripheral vision. At night, she would hear their whispers, guiding her thoughts, showing her glimpses of things hidden from the world. She had seen the truth, but the cost was high. The shadows weren't just messengers, they were manipulators, twisting reality to their will. The deeper she went, the more her perception of the world began to change. At school, she felt a growing sense of detachment from everyone around her. Her friends' voices became muffled, their concerns distant. Her mind was preoccupied with the secrets the shadows had revealed. She no longer saw the world the same way, and it made her feel isolated. One night, the shadows finally spoke clearly, revealing their ultimate purpose. Emily was lying in her bed, the quiet of the house surrounding her. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the room, and the shadows materialized at the edges of her vision. "Why are you doing this?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. The shadows replied, "We were sent to you because you are the one who will help us unlock the door. The door that leads to what lies beyond." The shadows were not mere whispers, they were the keepers of a forbidden knowledge, ancient and powerful. They had been waiting for someone capable of hearing their call. Emily had been chosen to lead them through the final threshold, but the price for that knowledge was steep. Suddenly, a flood of memories washed over Emily. She saw Eleanor again, this time not as a ghostly figure, but as someone who had once walked this very path. Eleanor had embraced the shadows, believing they would show her the truth. But the truth had been too much for her to bear. The shadows had consumed her, leaving her mind shattered and her spirit lost. Eleanor had become one of them, a part of the shadows, forever bound to the darkness she had once sought to understand. The realization hit Emily like a tidal wave. The shadows had already claimed Eleanor, and now they wanted her. The truth was dangerous, it was a knowledge that could drive a person mad, leave them lost in the void. Step forward, and you will gain the knowledge you seek. But beware, for it will take everything from you. Your mind, your soul, your very identity may vanish into the darkness. Or, turn away, and you will live in ignorance, forever haunted by what you could have known. Emily's heart raced as she stood at the crossroads of destiny. The allure of knowing the truth was powerful, but she had seen the consequences. Eleanor had paid the ultimate price. Was she willing to risk everything for knowledge? In that moment, Emily realized that the shadows weren't just a force, they were a test. A test of her strength, her will, and her ability to choose. To accept their offer would mean losing herself, becoming another lost soul in the dark. But to refuse them would mean living the rest of her life in the shadow of what could have been. She thought of her family, her friends, and the life she had known. She thought of the world outside, where the light was still pure and the shadows had no hold. Emily made her choice. "No," she whispered, her voice firm. "I will not let the shadows control me." With that, the shadows roared in fury, swirling around her in a chaotic frenzy. They tried to pull her in, but Emily resisted with every ounce of strength. She closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth of the light that had always been there, the light of the world outside the darkness. She could feel the presence of the shadows weakening as she embraced the light within herself. It wasn't an easy battle. The shadows clawed at her mind, tempting her with visions of forbidden knowledge, showing her glimpses of the truth that no one was meant to see. But Emily fought back, her resolve hardening. she would not succumb. As the storm inside her subsided, Emily opened her eyes to find the shadows gone. The forest was still, and the night was peaceful. She had made her choice, and the darkness no longer had a hold over her. But she knew the truth now. The shadows were always there, lurking in the corners of her mind, waiting for the moment when someone would be foolish enough to seek them out again. Emily had won, but at what cost? She no longer saw the world in the same way. The shadows had left their mark on her, and though they were gone, their whispers still echoed in her mind. She had chosen the light, but the darkness would never truly leave her. Emily returned home, feeling different, changed. The world seemed brighter, clearer, but there was an emptiness in her heart. The truth she had sought had come at a price, and though she had escaped the shadows, a part of them would always linger within her. She had been given a second chance, a new beginning, but the journey was far from over. She would have to live with the knowledge of what the shadows had shown her, and perhaps, one day, she would return to the clearing to face them once again. But for now, she had made her choice. She would live in the light, embracing the life she had left. Emily's journey into the darkness had taught her more than she ever could have imagined. The shadows had shown her truths, offered her forbidden knowledge, and tempted her with power. But in the end, it wasn't the truth that mattered most, it was the choice she made. The power to control her destiny was hers, not the shadows, and it was that strength that allowed her to break free. But the shadows, as with all dark forces, never truly vanish. They linger in the corners of our minds, in the spaces we refuse to explore. Emily had chosen to live in the light, but she would never forget the dark places she had been. The whispers might fade, but the experience would shape her forever. The truth she sought came with a heavy price, and it was one she would carry with her, not as a burden, but as a reminder of her own strength. The shadows may have tried to claim her, but in the end, it was Emily who chose the path she would walk. And though the world seemed brighter now, there was always a part of her that wondered, what would have happened if she had chosen to step deeper into the darkness? Could she have learned more? Or would she have lost herself completely? That question would haunt her for the rest of her life. But for now, Emily had made peace with her decision. She had faced the darkness, walked away from its grip, and embraced the light. The shadows may continue to whisper, but they no longer had the power to control her. As for the rest of us, Emily's story serves as a reminder. Some truths are better left undiscovered, but for those who dare to seek them, the journey is never without consequence. The shadows may always be there, waiting for the next soul brave enough to listen. Will that be you? Thank you for joining us in this thrilling journey into the unknown. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep up with more intriguing tales from Legend Story. Stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some shadows are better left unchased.